Wonderful. All right, as soon as I see the record is happening, I'll get us started. There it is. All right, the meeting of the St. Paul City Council has come to order. Roll call.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Naker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Tao.
Here.
Council President Brenman.
Here.
7 present, no one absent.
And if you'd like, please stand as Council Member Jalali leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 2 through 12 are before you for your consideration.
All right, and I understand that we will be taking item number 6 off consent, item number 12 off consent, and item number 3. 3, 6, and 12. Is there anything else that should be taken separately? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tao moves the balance of the consent agenda. Roll call.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item number 3, Resolution 21-1575, approving the application with conditions per the Deputy Legislative Hearing Officer for DWD Group LLC, doing business as Billy's on Grand for liquor on sale Sunday, liquor on sale 2 a.m., liquor outdoor service area patio entertainment, and gambling location licenses located at 857 Grand Avenue.
All right, and I see Ms. Nicker has a hand up on this item. Okay, I was just going to ask, I'm assuming that's the one item that we have someone to testify.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Ms. Nicker.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say that I think we need to lay this over until December 1st because additional information has come in. I didn't know about testimony. But.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was just a number on the screen. Somebody was trying to get into the meeting, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't just let somebody into the meeting before we knew who it was, but I believe it's someone testifying on a different item. So sorry, I was giving, Sherry and I were communicating through some kind of blinking thing that we do. So yes. Okay, so Ms. Naker requests a layover to December 1st on this item, contemplating the Thanksgiving holiday, I believe. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to December 1st. Item number 6 is Resolution 21-1631, approving the appointment of Dua Yang as legislative aide in Ward 4.
Councilmember Jalali.
Thank you. I can be brief with this one. I just didn't want it to pass by without acknowledgement that we're so excited, Dua, to welcome you to City Hall. You've been on the job a handful of weeks now, so can't leave now. We're approving you. Thank you for saying yes. We're so excited for all the good work you've done and will continue doing. I just wanted to get the chance to shout you out and look forward to passing this with my colleagues. Appreciate you all. Thanks.
I am going to speak in support of the motion. I'm really excited to work with Dua Yang as legislative aide in Ward 4. I know she's running straight up the learning curve right now and really at the same time hitting the ground running. And so I think she'll be a great asset to both Ward 4 and to the city and at large. So welcome, Ms. Yang. It's exciting to have you here. Any other comments before we take a motion from Ms. Jalali? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 12 is Resolution 21-1655, recognizing November 20th as World Children's Day and pledging the City of St. Paul's commitment to the future of its youngest residents.
Councilmember Naker.
Thanks, Council President, and thanks so much to my colleagues for your support of this resolution. 62 years ago this Saturday, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, which defines children's rights to food, healthcare, education, and protection from exploitation. And in recognition of that anniversary, every day, every year on November 20th, communities across the world recognize this day as World Children's Day. And so I wanted to bring this resolution forward, I think for the second time annually, to recognize and to restate our commitment as a city to our littlest St. Paul residents and their families. And I think all of us on this council, both personally, as parents, as grandparents, as aunts and uncles, as former teachers in some cases, feel this commitment to our youngest residents personally, but it's also a commitment that as a city and as a policy matter is really a lot more than words. It's something that we act on, that we budget for every year, every day with our many programs, College Bound St. Paul, our excellent programming through our parks and libraries and rec centers, summer jobs and internships through our Right Track internship program, and Spark, our childcare and early learning collaborative that many of us are part of, and many, many other programs as well. And so I think this is something that we are demonstrating every single day, but it's also something that's important to recognize in particular this year, because we have all been through an incredibly difficult 20 months at this point. And I think it's important to recognize the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on children in our community. And just a couple of facts that I want to thank my legislative aide, Tina Mackey, for pulling on this point. But we know that the pandemic has had a disparate impact on young people in early care and education, negative academic growth, deepened inequities, increased challenges to mental health and well-being, hunger, housing instability, missed medical appointments, and so much more. We know that COVID has disproportionately impacted people living in poverty, and 65% of children in St. Paul Public Schools qualify for free or reduced lunch, which is a measure of poverty. 46% of students in St. Paul Public Schools speak a home language other than English. And so remote learning has been particularly challenging for those students for whom English is not a first language. It's also been much more difficult for childcare providers to be able to fill staff shortages and for parents to find access to childcare. And even in post-secondary community colleges, we've seen enrollment decrease by 13% at St. Paul College, just as one example. So I think it's important to note that our children are counting on us more than ever this year, and that it's more incumbent on us than ever to keep their interests front and center. And I know that we will do that. So I will just read the last two resolved. Resolved that the City of St. Paul recognizes November 20th as World Children's Day in St. Paul, and be it further resolved that the City of St. Paul recognizes the inherent rights of children and commits to prioritizing their needs so that St. Paul's children can reach their full potential. Thank you.
All right, we'll take that as a motion from Ms. Naker. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 13 is an update on the 2020 census.
All right, we're excited to have the long-awaited update on the 2020 census, and we have a staff report today and an opportunity to ask questions. So take it away, Claire.
So excited to talk about the census today. We are total census nerds, so we welcome every opportunity to talk about it. I wanted to first pass off to Tony Newborn to see if she wanted to start off with a conversation about how we kind of all got here and the city got involved in this census work, and then we'll go into a brief presentation on what we did and the great results we had and what's up next.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you, council members. I am in the car running from a meeting that we had, and so I'm really glad to be in the space with you all. And as Claire stated, to talk about the census. It was one of our bright moments in 2019 and also in the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic hit, where we were doing a lot of engagement around the census and organizing around the census. And just to walk you all back through how we started. We formed the census complete count committee alongside with Ramsey County in 2018. And at that point in time, we thought, oh, well, we're starting late in the process, and we were one of the first complete count committees that were formed. And we were fortunate enough to have really good partners with Ramsey County to start this complete count committee. And as some of you may remember, the purpose of that to to do community engagement around it and to create opportunities for our community members to get involved with the census, to learn about the census, and to ensure that they had the information that they needed to connect with their constituents. And in 2018 with Ramsey County, and then it grew from there. We had our awesome chairs, Council Member Jalali, as well as Commissioner Ryan Hart from Ramsey County to co-lead this effort. And they were against Sabini. It started out with quarterly meetings that we had. We moved into meeting on a monthly basis. And just a quick shout out and note to Councilmember Jalali on when we realized as we were, the census all of a sudden became highly political, in more ways than we had anticipated with the previous administration and what questions were going to be on the census and how we were going to do outreach. I remember distinctly once the committee started to really form and start to get moving, that we realized that, hey, we're going to lose a seat and we don't have the resources that we needed in place from the Census Bureau to really get the word out about the census and to engage our community. And Councilmember Jalali said, okay, we're going to do this. We're not going to lose our seat if we can help it. And we're going to ensure that we have the resources and making the connections with the community and to organize. Part of her background that we know is organizing, and she was instrumental in lighting a fire within the group to help ensure that we are getting the word out about the jobs that were taking place, census related jobs, and then just about the census as a whole. So this group really, and once we had to shift to virtual meetings, they continued to stay engaged, and we realized even in the midst of COVID that it was definitely important that in whether we had to socially distance, get the word out about the census, and we were able to. And Claire we'll talk about this in the presentation. We were able to achieve our goals. We didn't lose a seat, and which we were truly proud about. And I'm just really happy that when you talk about engagement from a citywide and even countywide level, it can be really daunting. But what this group did was organize, and under the leadership of our two chairs, including Councilmember Jalali, that we organize and we organize well in an equitable way. Clear about this later. We had food at all of our events, which definitely, when you're asking people to come to a space from 5 to 7:30 p.m., food is a must. We had food for all of these events. We were able to make connections, and we were able to continue mobilizing staff. So Claire's going to walk us through the presentation to highlight some of the things that we did, and then we'll get into the data as well. But thank you so much for having us here to present.
All right, folks, I am just pulling up the presentation. Are you seeing 2020 census report? Wonderful. All right. So I'm going to try to breeze through some of this background information that many of you are familiar with, but it's good to kind of set the tone of our conversation with why is the census important. So it determines how we're represented at all levels of government, right? It guides billions of dollars in federal funding. The estimates here in the state of Minnesota were roughly $2,800 per person over the course of 10 years, or $20,000 for the full 10 years. That's around 8.7 billion in St. Paul alone. And the census also, just determines where we locate a number of things: our schools, childcare centers, roads, grocery stores, so much more, right? The census affects so much of what we do here at the city. And we also knew going into the census that we had some challenges ahead of us, particularly with some historically undercounted communities in St. Paul, both along neighborhood lines and around just populations in general across our city. So that looked like, in particular, our Frogtown, North End, and East Side neighborhoods, young children across our city, renters, people of color, Indigenous folks, immigrants, refugees, non-English speakers, families with low incomes, undocumented and mixed status families, people who are highly mobile or experiencing homelessness. And just have to highlight within that the most undercounted population consistently has been children under 5 years old. So folks forget to count their new little babies and their little ones that are around. And these were all things that were top of mind for us going into the census. So just to see that visually, want to show again, these are the neighborhoods that were historically undercounted and where we wanted to focus our attention around the census. So that's, I say this again to show the challenges we just had going into the census, thinking about this as like where we were at the end of the year in 2019. And we all know there were some other things in store for us, right, as 2020 came along. Here were some of the other challenges. So the census was not available in 4 of the top 6 languages that are spoken in St. Paul: Hmong, Karen, Oromo, and Somali. There was this fear of completing the census. Tony talked about this. There was a push from the Trump administration to add a citizenship question to the census form. Thankfully, that wasn't added, but that resulted in a lot of fear in our communities. Lack of support from the Census Bureau, I'm going to dig into a little bit deeper in the next slide, but there were just in general less resources put towards this effort. And then the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'll jump into that in a moment here too. So our census area offices were one of the first challenges we faced in terms of lack of support from the Census Bureau. So this is the way they kind of organize their operation across the country. And the state of Minnesota was divided into 3 areas: a northern area, a southern area, and Hennepin County. You'll notice I didn't say Ramsey County in that. And that meant that Ramsey County and St. Paul fell into the southern area. So our nearest census office was actually in Rochester. And where Hennepin County had 10 full-time employees dedicated to this effort when they put the office together, the Rochester area had 1 part-time employee, right? Serving that entire section of the state. So we knew we were going to have to step up as a city, right? And really pay attention to this because the federal investment wasn't going to be there. COVID-19's impact on the 2020 census. So, the census, and when I say this, I mean really that non-response follow-up, of that knocking on doors, right, and telling you, hey, you got to fill out this form. That's the largest mobilization effort in North America. And for folks to have to be conducting this in-person follow-up in a global pandemic, something we never would have imagined happening, what a challenge, right? And that meant that the timelines were shifted. You can think back again to March 2020. That's when the census went live, when you could first fill it out online. And that's when we were starting to see our first cases here in Ramsey County. By the time we were getting into April and May, we were, in full-blown lockdowns. And so the non-response follow-up that was slated to start in May had to get pushed back, right? And then all those timelines had to get pushed back. And that meant there was going to be less time to follow up with folks who didn't self-respond to the census on their own. And then the last piece here is really just the Trump administration trying to end the count early. If you followed that in the news, there was that push to end the count early in September. Then there went into the courts. There was a back and forth battle. It ended up ending in October. But that also created a lot of confusion for folks, and was certainly a challenge. So now to the fun things on what the city did to deal with all these challenges. Tony talked a lot already about our complete count committee that was formed with Ramsey County. We hired additional staff, namely myself, and we spent the money that we had on the census. A lot of that went towards the resources to like mobilize folks. We also had some amazing work that we did with local community radio stations. There was food that we had at these complete count committee events, and lots of materials that we provided to all of our partners who made up that complete count committee, and to help them do that outreach in their neighborhoods. A big accomplishment for us was the number of census takers that we recruited. We recruited over 4,100 census takers. Again, I think back to that census area office where we were with Rochester and their part-time employee. Like, that person was trying to recruit census takers for Ramsey County and a number of other counties across southern Minnesota. And so we had to mobilize our complete count committee to like call their friends and their family and their neighbors and people who were looking for jobs to make sure that they put in that application to be a census taker. Our libraries served as questionnaire assistance centers. That's a name for a place where people could go to get help filling out the census. And, due to the pandemic, there wasn't as much time to get that help in person, but it was a commitment from us as a city. And we participated in Census at Work, and that was a way for us to say that our employees were encouraged to take the census, and they could use their time at work to do so. That was an initiative of the St. Paul Area Chamber, and we were one of the partners in that. So digging in a little deeper on our complete count committee, again, we just really want to thank Councilmember Jalali for all of her leadership and support, really championing the census and making sure that was top of mind for our community. We had so many amazing partners that I couldn't even put on this one slide who made up our complete count committee, but our schools, other cities in Ramsey County, so many amazing organizers and community organizations, and they're responsible for all the success that I'll go into in a moment. They're the ones who led this effort, and we were so fortunate to have such a great group of people be a part of our complete count committee. Our community investments, this is, we did ads with local radio stations, we did interviews, we had, food from vendors at our events, and we highlight that just to say, like, whenever we have an opportunity to spend money, that's an opportunity to spend local, right? That's an opportunity to spend with businesses owned by people of color who've historically been left out of the process. That's an opportunity to invest back into our community. And so we're always really intentional about how we're spending those funds. And now into the results. So we did really well. Minnesota, namely, ranked number 1 in the country. We had the highest self-response rate at 75.1%. That was pretty consistent throughout. I think at one point we were a little worried about Wisconsin pulling up ahead of us, but we couldn't let that happen. So we stayed in that number 1 spot. St. Paul consistently ranked in the top 5 of self-responses for cities with a population over 300,000. We ended up finishing at number 5 with a self-response rate of 75.1, just the same amount as our state. And then Ramsey County was consistently ranked in the top 10 for self-response rates with counties with a population over 500,000. They finished at number 9 with a self-response rate of 79.1%, really, really high. And, the way that this works, the more people who self-respond to the census and who fill it out online or make that call, the less follow-up that you have to do. And so the thing that you could do to put yourself in the best position to get everyone counted in your city is to get people to self-respond. And so we knew we're going to be in a good spot when we were seeing our self-response rates already be this high. The great news here is that Minnesota kept its 8th seat. We'd been projected for a really long time to lose a House seat in reapportionment, and it was a razor thin margin. I think that's maybe the smallest margin in history. Certainly in the last few census, it is the smallest. We kept that by counting an extra 26 people. I also want to note here that if you think about this, the census is counting households, right? So if you think about our average household size, which in St. Paul is 2.49 people, that's counting like 10 households. So that's a census taker who counted 10 people one day. They can say I saved Minnesota's 8th seat, right? Hopefully all of you told, 10 households to fill out their census form. You saved our seat, right? We can all actually say that. New York, had they counted 89 more people, would have kept their seat. The reason why those numbers are slightly off is just because, populations vary across the country. Every state is entitled to at least one representative in the House of Representatives, so that's kind of part of that calculation. But 26 people, or about 10 or 11 households, is what we kept this seat by. So I thank you all for filling out your census forms. And just to see that on a map here, all the states in gray, including Minnesota, had no change in their representation. The states in orange lost a seat. A darker gray gained one. I think Texas is the only area where they gained 2 or more. So those were the final results. I am going to just finish up this presentation with a few more slides that are from the Met Council that dig in deeper into what the results showed us in St. Paul. Thought that'd be of interest to this group. I will preface by saying I'm not a data analyst who put this together, so if you've got really technical questions, we might need to refer you back to the Met Council for that. But they did a really good job of putting this information together and in a way that I think most of us can understand. So up first, just our population raw numbers. We see that we've had our largest gain since the 1920s, and our population's up at 311,527 folks. And that is how it has changed throughout time. Lots more people living in St. Paul. We love to see. Looking at this on a map, you can see where the gains were across our city. So, and across our different neighborhoods, anywhere where you see dark green on this map is where we've had gains of 20 to 97%. And so, namely some areas in the greater East Side and Dayton's Bluff, lots of chunks around St. Anthony Park, I think in the developments there, also in downtown, some parts of North End, Plain Phelan, close to West 7th. So this is where we saw our population gains across the city. We can also take a look at that by ward. And so just, it's another way to visualize that map. A lot of those gains in parts of Ward 2, that downtown area, some in Ward 4 in that St. Anthony Park area, and Ward 6 around Greater East Side, and 7 around Dayton's Bluff. So that's where population increase was by ward. Another way to look at this is, Councilmember Naker, do you have a question?
Thanks, and through the council president, just on that previous slide, are those the current population numbers as of the 2020 census?
Yes.
The 45,538 in Ward 2, that's the most recent population.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So this slide is really showing that net growth, much of that growth came from our residents who are Black, Indigenous people of color. In most of the neighborhoods, anywhere where you see the dark blue being the increase, that is from BIPOC residents, with the exception of downtown, where there is a significant increase from white population. So, but broadly, this is showing that our population between 2010 and 2020 really grew due to Black, Indigenous people of color in our city.
Ms. Naker has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I am so sorry, that was a mistake.
Yeah, still up. It looks like they're like that is largely true. I think when you're I'm trying to absorb this as quickly as I can. These graphs are so interesting. The one ahead of it was as well. It looks like West 7th was more split as well. But I definitely, when you talk about growth in Ward 6 and 7 and what I see in 5, that reads true to me, especially with our young population and our larger families moving into residential homes. So that it does not, compared to what I see, that doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah,
It's pretty exciting.
absolutely. And there's a few more slides here too that I think kind of speak to that around the difference in age as well. This shows that particularly our racial diversity is increasing, and you can see where we were at in 1990 with our white population being around 80% to where we are now, where we had known this for a while. Getting those estimates from the state demographer's office that we were a city where the majority of our residents are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. But these 2020 census results do confirm that and show that growth right over time. White residents still make up like the plurality, but you'll see that Asian Pacific Islander residents are around 19% of our population, Black or African American residents around 16%, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Latina around 10%, and then the other or multiracial category that folks had picked more than one, including a race that was not white, they'll be in that category. And then there's sometimes a small amount of folks that will click, other of what is not provided on the census form. And then American Indian at 1%. So again, some information that we've known, but this is our first census where that is reflected. And then we see here that, kind of given the population by age, we're seeing that the diversity will continue to increase. So of folks under 18, the largest percentage is amongst our Asian Pacific Islander population, followed by our white population, followed by our Black population, Hispanic Latino population, and then that other kind of multiracial group, and then American Indian. So we will see our diversity continue to increase as a city. This slide is pretty interesting. It does show where the percentage of BIPOC residents decreased in certain areas, in addition to where it decreased. So namely along University and parts of Summit University, going a little bit into that kind of Snelling, Lexington, Hamlin area, more so south of 94. And the last map that I will show here is just showing the most common race group across our city. So still in most areas, white, but in certain parts of our city, you'll see Black being the most common racial group. And in another kind of section around North End, East Side, the most common racial group being Asian Pacific Islander, and then over into the West Side, the most common race group being Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Latina. So those are the maps. I'll just finish with the last slide here to point out, of course, the next step in this is redistricting. And so we're really committed to activating, our residents and our complete count committee members to participate in that process. They're a great resource who helped us get folks counted, and we'll have a lot of great information and skills and strategies to share with us as we head into that. So the Charter Commission will be drawing, ward boundaries, Ramsey County, county boundaries, state legislature, state legislative and congressional boundaries. We continue to keep our complete count committee members informed on those those next steps in the process, any hearings that happen or listening sessions. And so we'll certainly work closely, most closely with the Charter Commission as they start thinking about having, those sessions to engage our community as they look at redistricting. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions folks have.
Could you flip back to the ward, the switch in the ward populations map just one more time? I know that we have this attached in the Legistar system. Yep. And folks can take a look at it, but I think this is interesting. I know when wards are distributed, they try to find that number, that in between number, and it's interesting to me. I do realize that there's going to be some shifting, but it's interesting to me actually how even things still are. Even with those changes, like there's definitely Ward 5, which I suspect was undercounted, is a little bit lower, and 6 is a little bit higher, but just like in the same, it's like basically 43 to 46. Which is interesting to me. It seems like there would be wider swings in one way or the other. So the redistricting could be less dramatic than maybe we were thinking it was. I had wondered with all the growth in downtown and on near University and 280 if 4 and 2 would be the ones that grew, but I think that was a lot of one unit, one bedroom apartments and one unit growth, as opposed to, as we were mentioning earlier, larger families moving into residential properties. But I had heard that the biggest growth was in 6 and 7, but I hadn't realized actually how close where the expand or how close in number we actually still are in spite of the 30,000 person growth in the city over the past 10 years. So that's very interesting. Are there other questions or comments? I know it's a lot to take in. Mr. Tolbert has a question or comment.
I just have a comment. I just want to thank you. These graphs are fantastic, and I think we used to have the state demographer come fairly often, but this is some of the best information that I've seen in a presentation in a while. I'm going to spend more time with it. I might have follow-up questions, but I just want to thank you for putting it together and presenting it. I really appreciate it. I think it's fantastic information. Hopefully helps us govern. So thank you very much for putting it together. And I encourage people to look at it out in the public.
It's great information.
So much. We had amazing partners, and I have to give many thanks to the Met Council for their partnership, putting this work together, and again, our complete count committee members on making all of this happen.
Ms. Jalali.
I think Councilmember Tolbert took my comment, so just ditto. I guess my one question would be, and it's okay if you don't know this, what is the rough timeline we expect now for the redistricting process? I know that there's kind of different things that depend on one another, like the state has to go through something, but then we can be doing concurrent work. Or do you have a sense of how that works? And if not, maybe we could just figure out who to direct that question to. But I think that's another thing folks are interested in hearing about.
Yeah, I can't give you exact dates at the moment, but again, Charter Commission will know their timelines for ward maps as well as Ramsey County. I will say that I was fortunate to work with some really amazing people, of course at the city, but also at Ramsey County and Hennepin County and City of Minneapolis. In addition to the state demographer's office, we just worked together so well, shared information and strategies and resources. And so we've continued to stay in touch and meet regularly to talk about the next steps on redistricting to make sure we're all informed. And as folks have questions about, what's going on in St. Paul versus Minneapolis, that we're just all aware. I have heard that, for as far as the state process, the Senate will come up with their own maps. The House will come up with their own maps. There's the divided legislature. So the courts have also already started their process, and that likely we won't know those results until sometime in February, but that will be for state and congressional maps.
Thank you very much. I'll follow up with our Charter Commission partners to learn more, and that's helpful as a rough sense.
And as a reminder to council members, this was maybe a part of the COVID flurry, but the Charter Commission has autonomy over our drawing our council boundaries. But we, as a council, passed a resolution that outlined best practices or things to consider when they drew those lines. Again, I'm looking at the map and wondering how much change we're really going to see. But we did, I think that we were trying to be ahead of the numbers so that there was no question that we were like trying to make, recommendations based on preserving our wards or preserving our home within our wards but more just like here are things that we recognize as council members that would be beneficial when we look into redistricting. And so I applaud that work by the council in advance of the census just to get on the radar and as part of the record as well. And it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out and if they take our advice over at the Charter Commission as well. I see Ms. Naker still has a hand up and Ms. Prince.
Thanks, Council President, and thanks so much, Ms. Verbeeden. This was such a fascinating presentation. I couldn't agree more with my colleagues. I was particularly excited just at the increasing diversity of our city, and particularly the amount of diversity in our folks under 18. That youth and that increasing diversity is just really exciting. And of course, my mind immediately goes to how can we use that as a marketing tool to attract more people to St. Paul, because we have this vibrancy and this richness. And so I understand you may not know this since you didn't do the research, but I would be curious to know how in particular, these demographics in terms of racial and ethnic diversity and also youth, because I know we're also a particularly young city, compare to other cities in the state or in the Midwest, because again, I think that's this is a huge strength of ours that we could be talking about. So do you happen to know any of those comparisons? Otherwise, we can follow up.
No, definitely follow up. There's going to be some great information on the Met Council's page in our, immediate surrounding area. But as the census continues to make more information available nationwide, we can look into that. We can post those follow-ups to the folks at the Met Council have been really helpful in putting this together as well.
Great, thanks.
Ms. Prince.
Thank you, Council President Brenmon, and thank you, Ms. Verbeeten, for this presentation. As my colleague said, this is just great information for us to have. It's very exciting. And to the point that Ms. Naker made, I think what is so incredibly exciting about our being such a young city is that the investments that we make in our kids now will lift up our whole city. I mean, we have an opportunity to, invest in early childhood education and improving our outlook for kids in our schools and our investments in our libraries and our parks, all speak to how we have the opportunity to help all our city's kids become successful and fully realize their potential. So I think that's a great guide for us to follow going forward. My question is, do we know when we will start to get more analysis on things like income? And I mean, I'm assuming that we are also seeing some increases in poverty, but I just wondered when we can expect to be getting some of that more detailed analysis on how people are doing in St. Paul and where we can also be directing our biggest investments going forward. It's so great to have this kind of information when we are at the same time seeing the investment from the federal government in our cities. So if we have any predictions about when we're going to see some of that analysis. That was
a lot of that information is starting to come out just even on the census quick facts page. I know for the Met Council, they know we've got our definitely our focus on racial equity work here at the city and want to pay a lot of attention to racial diversity across St. Paul. But I haven't looked in to see what they've put together on their page, but there's certainly some information about, income, household size, on census quick facts, and I can, follow up with that information for folks.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Yang.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Claire, for all of these really exciting statistics. For me, it's just so exciting to see the ways in which our city is growing and transforming day by day. And the results here, really are reflective of that. The slide that I was really interested in was the one about the 26 votes and us being able to keep our House seat because of that. And I feel the grassroots outreach of going to people at the doors and getting in touch with them face to face is really what made the huge difference in that. And so I was wondering if you knew, if you know of other states that also, or other cities, counties outside Minnesota that also did the same thing too, where they had that type of outreach strategy, or was it just here in Minnesota?
I'm sure there's so many amazing things to learn from across the country, but I spent most of my time, like I said, working with that kind of core group, metro area folks who I think were some of the best in the country. And I'm like, we all need to get together and somehow find all the other folks who are working on the census across the US to share stories. But I'm sure there are a lot of other great things for us to look for. And, a lot of what I care about doing right now is I came into this never having worked on the census before, and want to make sure we really do a good job of capturing this information. So as we go into 2030, which I'm sure will be here before we know it, there's somewhat of a rubric of what we've done, and folks are going in with with some information and some best practices. And now our group of what exactly should we be doing right now? Okay, we're just gonna have to figure this out. Does the Census Bureau usually not have an office that's located right next to you? Okay, we'll just figure it out. There was a lot of that, so that's something I've been thinking a lot about as well. And as I come across more of that information, I'll be sure to share with you all.
Thank you. I see Ms. Newborn has a hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say that in response to council members' print questions around the additional data around income and investments, I do know that the Planning and Economic Development Department in the city, PED, has a staff member or staff members who work on that information as well. And so, and I'm sure they're going to be partnering with Met Council. So that information may be coming up soon, and it may be helpful to reach out to that department to find out what their timeline is as well.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? And I definitely think that as we absorb this information and we move forward to redistricting, that we'll have lots more questions. But at seconding and thirding and fourthing, the appreciation and gratitude to your work, the team's work. I mean, this was an all hands on deck effort, and it was creative and fun and approachable. And I loved the little coloring book. I loved the videos that the council got to help make. I mean, just there was so much innovative engagement, and I loved it. It felt like the census was a fun thing and not a creepy thing like, ooh, the census is coming. It's like, ooh, the census is coming. And so I think if that's the overall feel, I think you've done your work, and Minnesota won. So congratulations. I mean, it is a contest, right? It's always a contest. Excellent. So we appreciate it so much. And again, Councilmember Jalali, thanks for representing the council with Commissioner Reinhardt from Ramsey County, and we appreciated that, the leadership there as well. We may have more questions once things start shaking out, but for now, thank you. We're full of gratitude for the work and for the report, and only just that it's 11:17 and we're finally hearing this. And I know that we've been so eager and itching to hear it, but it's kind of one of the finishing moves of our budget season is to get this information. And it was important to hear it before we went on to final budgets. So the timing was perfect, and it was very, we appreciate it very much. Anything from either Ms. Newborn or Ms. Verbetten before we go? All right. Well,
Just
thank you so
to all
much.
of you for filling out the form.
We
There's
did
another
that.
10, so.
I
Lots of
and
us on the call.
I want to take credit because I had a exchange student in my house at the time, so we got one extra. You know, just one. Okay. Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for the report. We appreciate it very much. All right.
Item 14 is final adoption of ordinance 21-42, amending section 220.05 of the legislative code to set rates for base level garbage service to be effective January 1st, 2022.
All right. This is third and final reading. Ms. Jalali would move approval. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 15 is final adoption of ordinance 21-45, amending chapter 64 of the administrative code to update deferral language, delete sewer separation references, and update assessment procedures.
And this item is before us for final adoption. Ms. Naker moves approval. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. Since this is before us for final adoption, I know I spoke about it in my council member staff report at first reading, but I just wanted to move approval and to recognize also that this came to me originally from a constituent, a senior citizen who reached out and said she was having trouble paying her street maintenance assessment and wondering if there was an option to defer, and I found out there wasn't. And I just say that because I think so often people believe that they can't make a difference to the policies on our books, and actually the exact opposite is the case, especially at the local level. I think that's the beauty of the work we do. So I just want to shout out to that constituent who made this entire policy change, and thank my colleagues for their patience with the 6 different amendments that needed to be offered to untangle all of this and make these deferrals easier to apply for.
I support your motion as well, Ms. Naker, and I appreciate your leadership on this. And as you've said, sometimes it's that one person that speaks out that can lead to changes that should have been made a long time ago, but it just wasn't brought to our attention. And systems always should be questioned and improved and revised. So I appreciate the work on this, all 6 of the ordinances, very much. So I'll be in support. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 16 is final adoption of ordinance 21-46, amending chapter 60 of the administrative code to clarify hardship deferral language.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion? Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 17 is final adoption of ordinance 21-47, amending chapter 177, removal of dangerous trees of the legislative code by deleting it in its entirety and combining its provisions into chapter 175 of the legislative code.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion? Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 18 is final adoption of ordinance 21-48, amending chapter 175A of the legislative code, emerald ash borer pest insect, by deleting it in its entirety and combining its provisions into chapter 175 of the legislative code.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion? Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 19 is final adoption of ordinance 21-49, amending Chapter 62 of the Administrative Code to clarify hardship deferral language and other language clarification.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion? Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 20 is final adoption of ordinance 21-50, amending Chapter 175 of the Legislative Code in order to combine 3 chapters regarding the abatement of dangerous or diseased trees into one chapter and to clarify hardship deferral language.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing, or I'm sorry, the ordinance is adopted. Item 21, resolution public hearing 21-300, considering the recommendation and order on motion for summary deposition submitted by the administrative law judge concerning the cigarette tobacco license held by Zachariah Abdu-Khudir doing business as the One Stop Market LLC at 1541 Maryland Avenue East.
And I believe Mr. Ernest is here from the City Attorney's Office with a staff report.
Council President Brenman, members of the council, Stephen Ernest, on behalf of the Department of Safety and Inspections, this is a public hearing to consider a recommendation and order that was prepared and submitted by an administrative law judge concerning the cigarette tobacco license held by the One Stop Market LLC, which is located at 1541 Maryland Avenue East. Following a shots fired call on March 30th of 2020, which involved an exchange of gunfire at the licensed premises, the department, DSI, alleged multiple violations of the terms and conditions of One Stop's license, including a failure to take reasonable steps to discourage loitering on the premises, a failure to maintain its video equipment, and failure to produce requested video from the March 30th incident. As the department was preparing to take adverse action against One Stop on the basis of these alleged violations, there was another service call on June 1st of 2020, this time involving a lengthy physical altercation between several individuals on the at the licensed premises. The department requested video for that date, and in reviewing that video found multiple sales of single cigarettes and flavored tobacco products, an open exchange of firearms and fighting inside of the store, as well as several instances of customers smoking cigarettes inside of the store. The department alleged that this conduct violated the citywide ban on single cigarettes and flavors, as well as the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act, which is a state statute. The department also alleged that the licensee was operating their business in an unsafe manner, which is a basis under our code for taking adverse action. Following the review of the June 1st video, the department staff met with One Stop licensee to discuss the violations that I've described and then educate them on their license conditions as well as state and local law. Roughly a month after this meeting, the department received information from the St. Paul Police Department that One Stop was continuing to sell single cigarettes, and the officers in their report to DSI also noted that they had observed individuals gambling on the premises in plain view of One Stop employees, which the department alleged violated the same loitering condition that's on One Stop's license. So on December 10th, 2020, so last year, the department sent a notice of violation of that to the licensee. In that notice, the department alleged all of the violations that I described and informed the licensee that it intended to request a double upward departure from the presumptive penalty in our penalty matrix, from the presumptive penalty of $500 to a penalty of $2,000 and a 10-day suspension. But after reviewing the video evidence from the June 1st incident that the department already had in its possession, it discovered that there were actually many more sales of single cigarettes and flavored tobacco products than it previously thought. It actually brought the number from 2 all the way up to 32. And so on that basis, the department amended its notice to seek revocation of the license. So that's a greater than double upward departure from the presumptive penalty. In response to the amended notice, the licensee requested an evidentiary.
Mr. Ernest, if you don't mind, Mr. Thompson, I see your hand is up, and when we come to the point where we will ask for testimony from you, we'll call on you, okay? You can put your hand down. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ernest.
So in response to the amended notice, the licensee requested an evidentiary hearing before an administrative law judge, and the department moved for summary disposition. A hearing on that motion, on the motion for summary disposition, was held on May 28th of this year, 2021, and the ALJ issued his recommendation and order on that motion on September 7th. The order and recommendation are included in the resolution packet, by the way. So in sum, the ALJ concluded in his order that while there was sufficient proof that the licensee had sold single cigarettes and flavored tobacco products in violation of our code, and that the licensee had allowed customers to smoke indoors in violation of the Clean Indoor Air Act. At the same time, the ALJ found that there was not sufficient proof on the remaining allegations. Specifically, he found that the department failed to establish that the licensee had operated its business in an unsafe manner, and that the department failed to establish that the licensee violated the terms and conditions of its license. So those are the video, the producing the requested video conditions, the loitering condition, and the maintaining your video equipment in a reasonable condition, that condition as well. So because the ALJ didn't grant summary disposition on those allegations, he recommended that they be continued to an evidentiary hearing. So that was the argument section of the order. In the penalty section of the order, the ALJ highlighted the requirement in our code that counsel has to have substantial and compelling reasons to depart from the presumptive penalty. And he observed that this language is similar to the language that's found in the Minnesota sentencing guidelines that requires substantial and compelling circumstances to depart from the presumptive sentence in criminal convictions. So he found he was using the Minnesota sentencing guidelines as a way to inform his understanding of the penalty matrix in our code. And by relying on the case law that's developed under the sentencing guidelines, he found that the Minnesota Supreme Court has required severe, aggravating, and factually atypical circumstances to warrant a greater than double upward departure from the presumptive sentence contained in the sentencing guidelines. So based on all these observations, the ALJ rejected the department's request for revocation, and he instead recommended that a $1,000 fine be imposed against the licensee for the violations on which he granted summary disposition. So those are the single cigarette, flavor, and indoor smoking violations. The ALJ reasoned that this penalty was appropriate because the large number of sales, as well as the flagrancy of the indoor smoking violation, I believe an employee actually lit a customer's cigarette in one instance, those provided the substantial and compelling reasons for an upward departure beyond that presumptive penalty. The ALJ, he went on to explain that a greater than double upward departure to revocation based on the violations he had granted summary disposition on was inappropriate because they didn't constitute the severe, aggravating, and atypical circumstances that, in his judgment, was required to support revocation. He also indicated that even if the remaining allegations were proven at an evidentiary hearing, they would not likely support revocation either for the same reasons. So with all that in mind, the request of the department is that you adopt the recommendation and order of the ALJ. But if counsel instead prefers to explore other options, the department requests that counsel first allow it to try those remaining allegations at an evidentiary hearing before the administrative law judge.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ernest. Other questions for Mr. Ernest? Thank you for the thorough report. All right. Seeing that there are no, Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I was slow to the hand button. Just one question, Mr. Ernest. So the $1,000 penalty is not a double upward departure. That's one upward departure from the presumptive of 500, right?
Council President Brenman, Councilmember Naker, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Ernest? All right. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Thompson. If you'd like to share your perspective, we have a few moments to hear from your side as well. Welcome.
Thank you. You can hear me all right?
Yep, we sure can.
I just want to really emphasize that a lot of those were allegations, and they were, as the judge rightfully found, not supported by the evidence. The number of those things, the allegations that were rattled off, were not true in from our position at all. And there was, I would encourage the council, if you have any question about this, to read not only the ALJ's order, but also our brief and affidavit submitted in opposition to the department's motion for summary disposition. And I think we find it quite enlightening. Other than that, I would encourage the council just to follow the recommendation, and I would have nothing further than that, unless, of course, the council has any questions they'd like me to address for the one stop.
Great. So just to clarify, sir, you are supportive of adopting the recommendations as well?
Yes, Your Honor, Ms. President.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Thompson? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Yang, would you like to close the public hearing, or do you have a question for Mr. Thompson? Ms. Yang would move to close the public hearing.
Yeah, close the public hearing.
Okay, Ms. Yang would move to close the public hearing. Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed.
Ms. Yang.
Thanks, Council President. I wanted to get clarification from our staff. So I did hear at the very end, it sounds like the recommendation is to take the, accept the administrative law judge's hearing and the recommendation from them, but kind of sound like there was something after that as well, and it wasn't really clear what that was. So can you explain that again?
Yes, Councilmember Yang, all I was saying is the department requests that if council wants to deviate from the resolution and wants to take a different action based on the allegations, if it wants to move forward on those remaining allegations, so the license conditions violations that the department alleged, as well as the other allegations, the unsafe business operation allegations, you at least let us try those allegations before the ALJ and get a judgment on them, because we didn't actually have an evidentiary hearing on those allegations. It was just a hearing on the motion, the summary disposition motion.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I feel the briefing from you was really very detailed and helpful to know. I did look through the attachments as well, and I feel like the violations are very severe. Like, this is a neighborhood where I lived in it. And I remember the constant sirens, and also the many fights, that happened where we had large amounts of people there. There was also a transgender person who was brutally abused too inside the store, and this was public on social media and went viral. And so, just considering like the trauma that has happened in this neighborhood for so long, I feel like if we were to take the recommendation today, it would just, it would be very, very lenient. And I think that there's more to really dig into here. So I feel like what I would motion for us to approve today is for our staff to go back and really try the other options that you wanted to as well in front of the administrative law judge.
All right. So I understand your recommendation here. I just want to make sure that we have that clear for the public record, or for the record. Mr. Ernest, can you restate the second side of that so that we know, are clearly for Sherry, and just so we can get this correct? What is the motion? To return it to?
Councilmember, or Council President Brenmo and council members. So the resolution is just to adopt the recommendation and order of the ALJ. And that the judge, he just granted summary disposition on those violations. So the request of the department is just to accept the recommendation and order of the judge, or if you would prefer to take some other action other than adopting this resolution to first allow us to go back before the ALJ and try those remaining allegations, because we have not tried those yet.
Yep, and that's the part I get. What is the actual motion? To return it to the city attorney's office, to return it to the ALJ? Ms. Tierney?
Yeah, Council President Brenmo, and thank you. I think the motion would be to refer to the city attorney's office for further action. Okay. And I can tell you what that further action will be. We'll go back to the administrative law judge and have the evidentiary hearing.
Okay, and I just wanted to be clear. I did understand the intention, and and what Mr. Ernest was saying, but I didn't know the actual technical motion. So the motion is refer to the city attorney's office for further action. All right.
Yes.
All right. So that there's a motion in front of us. So, Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. Stephanie, can you clarify if while this is happening, this process is happening with the ALJ, is the business in operation at this time?
Council President Brenmo, Councilmember Tao, yes, One Stop is still in operation at this point in time.
And do we know if this operator has other business that they're operating in the city, St. Paul?
To my knowledge, no. One Stop is the only location.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There's a motion from Ms. Yang. Any other discussion on that motion? All right. Seeing none, roll call.
Madam President, I'm a little confused because the motion doesn't line up with what we normally would do, whereas being adopted as amended, laid over. So I'm not sure what the action would be.
When we do legislative hearings, we refer back to the legislative hearing officer. Does it not work in this situation?
Well, that's not a body for us, and we can lay it over, but we need to have a date certain. The way our system works.
Yeah, I don't know if we're laying it over though. We're returning it to the city attorney's office to pursue. Ms. Prince?
I have a question on the substance of what is before us, because I just reread the resolution and it says even if the allegations were determined to be true, it still wouldn't result in revocation. So is the most that we could get out of this, if everything was true, the $1,000 matrix penalty? I guess it's a question for Mr. Ernest.
Councilmember Prince, yes, that is the reason for why the department is recommending that council adopt the resolution, because the ALJ's reasoning in that opinion is that even if we had gone back and proven those outstanding allegations that he didn't grant summary disposition on, based on his reasoning, his interpretation of our penalty matrix, he said that it was very unlikely that we would get the penalty that we were requesting, which was revocation, which is why the department is requesting for council to adopt the resolution.
Okay. I don't know if that point was clear, or maybe we missed that when we were thinking about this at first, but that is a significant issue here, is that if the ALJ determines that the most we would get out of this is the $1,000 matrix penalty, we may, I just wanted to raise that issue as we're thinking about this.
Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. And
I will also say that Ms. Tierney did put her camera on, which sometimes means she would like to weigh in with legal advice before we grind more sausage here. So could we just quick go to her? I just realized her okay, Ms. Tierney.
Thank you, Council President Brenmo, for reading my secret code. I just wanted to remind the council of a couple of things. I think first of all, we're having some issue with what exact action the council would be taking. I think the action you would take at this point is simply not to adopt the resolution. And then the matter would die and it will go back to the city attorney's office to complete further action, which I think makes sense for Sherry. But also, as to Councilmember Prince's question, the question is whether an ALJ's recommendation is just that, it's a recommendation. And so the council can deviate from those recommendations if you disagree with them. And so what Mr. Ernest is asking on behalf of the department is, before you deviate, let us go back and prove up these additional violations so that we have more of a case for you to consider whether deviation is appropriate. Does that make sense?
And if I could just speak to that, I think where I'm confused is that what is before us is the staff's recommendation that we accept the ALJ's recommendation, the ALJ's thinking on this. So the resolution is a staff recommendation. And I understand that if we decide not to, if we don't agree with the staff recommendation, then we can send it back. But the staff seems to be recommending the same thing that the ALJ is saying. And I just wanted to clarify that point.
Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I'm wondering if it's possible that after an evidentiary hearing, we might not get revocation, but we might get the third level up, which I believe is $2,000 fine and a 10-day suspension. I mean, it sounds like the ALJ said you wouldn't get what you want, which is revocation, but if there's any possible upwardness that happens after evidentiary hearing, I think that makes this different than if it's absolutely not going to be recommended any different than what we have in front of us today.
So we'll help assist with an upward departure. I see Mr. Ernest. Were you nodding?
Yes, Councilmember Naker. The analysis in the judge's opinion just applied to the greater than double upward departure. So we jumped from one stop. This was their first violation. We were jumping all the way from the first box to the fourth, and he was analyzing just that. So it's entirely possible that if we went back and tried those remaining allegations, the analysis of the judge would not impact if we could get the penalty in the third box. That's entirely possible.
All right. So one approach would be to withdraw this item. And then it could come back as a new file. We wouldn't have to do a layover, and that would get to Ms. Yang's motion. I will say that we voted, so we'd have to take this for reconsideration. But it's hard to withdraw it after we voted in favor. But I'm looking. The reason I was clarifying the motion before we voted was because I didn't know what the actual motion was. So I will repeat the question. It sounds like Ms. Yang is making a recommendation that we send it back to the city attorney's office for further work. So is withdrawing the best thing to do? And if that is the best thing to do to get the results that she's looking for, do we need to reconsider the vote and then withdraw?
Council President Brenmo, this is Rachel Tierney. That would be my recommendation. I think that's the cleanest thing for the way that we keep our records.
All right. So we would have a motion from Ms. Yang to reconsider the vote. And then when we reconsider, she would withdraw.
Did we vote?
Just on closing the public hearing.
Okay, great. So the recommendation then would be for Ms. Yang to withdraw the item. All right. Ms. Yang moves to withdraw the item.
Okay, so item 21 is withdrawn. Item 22 is resolution public hearing 21-288, ratifying the assessment for the 2021 street maintenance service program for sweeping and lighting.
All right, and this item has a version 2 in Legistar that removes one address, an address we've discussed in the past from Ms. Naker. So Ms. Naker moves version 2. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted as amended. Item 23, Resolution Public Hearing 21-319, authorizing the city to accept $11,588,419.60 in Round 2 Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Funds, amending the 2021 budget to incorporate and appropriate the funds, and authorizing the execution of necessary agreements.
Okay, and this item is at a public hearing virtually, and I guess before we vote, I would just say that this is $11.5 million that we are accepting for emergency rental assistance funds, and that's a big deal. And it's something that lands squarely on the shoulders of our city's housing team and PED, and it's a lot of work. And so I just want to acknowledge how important this is and how much money we're talking about being distributed to our city, and not just let this one blow past us because it's a big deal. Is there any other discussion on this item? I'd move to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. The legislative hearing officer recommends adoption of the following resolutions as no objections to these recommendations were received. Item 25, RLH TA 21-426, 2211 Benson Avenue. Item 26, RLH SAO 21-71, 1143 Churchill Street. Item 27, RLH TA 21-405, 914 Cook Avenue East. Item 28, RLH TA 21-408, 822 Edmond Avenue. Item 29, RLH TA 21-431, 1501 Eleanor Avenue. Item 30, RLH TA 21-398, 1282 Hague Avenue. Item 31, RLH TA 21-400, 1282 Hague Avenue. Item 33, RLH TA 21-421, 667 Laurel Avenue. Item 34, RLH TA 21-451, 667 Laurel Avenue. Item 35, RLH TA 21-453, 667 Laurel Avenue. Item 36, RLH TA 21-432, 1169 Marshall Avenue. Item 37, RLH TA 21-444, 1789 Maryland Avenue East. Item 38, RLH TA 21-419, 1115 Norton Street. Item 39, RLH TA 21-446, 1774 Rainy Avenue. Item 40, RLH TA 21-424, 1707 Rose Avenue East. Item 41, RLH TA 21-425, 843 Selby Avenue. Item 42, RLH TA 21-428, 1706 Sims Avenue. Item 43, RLH TA 21-445, 120-122 Stevens Street West. Item 44, RLH TA 21-429, 1343 Stillwater Avenue. Item 45, RLH TA 21-396, 2279 Summit Avenue. Item 46, RLH AR 21-91, collection of delinquent garbage bills. Item 47, RLH AR 21-92, collection of delinquent garbage bills. And item 48, RLH AR 21-99, also collection of delinquent garbage bills. And item 49, RLH AR 21-100, collection of delinquent garbage bills. And again, the motion is to adopt these items.
So moved by Mr. Tolbert. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following item, no objection to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendation was received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption of item 32, RLH TA 21-158, 936 Jefferson Avenue. And again, the motion is to amend and adopt these items, or this item.
This items. And that was item
32.
32. All right. All right. So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted as amended. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. Item 24, RLH TA 21-449, 1454 Arona Street, and we have a staff report.
Welcome, Ms. Mormond.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. A very brief staff report. This is a garbage bill that went unpaid into assessment. I would say ostensibly so that the property owner could share his opinion about the way that garbage bills are charged out. His concern can be simply stated that as a very low waster, he doesn't think that he should pay the same rate as people who have more to dispose of. The structure of the rates right now, based on can size and the number of cans you have to have for the units, it is a uniform system across the city. If you have a single family home through a fourplex, you need to have the service in the current rate structure. As ever, getting this kind of feedback is useful for negotiation of the next contract, but for right now, this bill I recommend is appropriate for how the rest of the city is being billed in the program, and therefore I recommend its approval.
Thank you, Ms. Mormond. And I know that council definitely agreed during initial negotiations that we should incentivize less use. And we've heard that loud and clear, and hopefully to the extent possible, that can be part of the next negotiations. But again, that's not what's in front of us today. Any discussion on this item? I believe that was item 24, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my understanding as well that this is an example of a common issue that we've been kind of dealing with over the years and since I joined the council, and my office has supported many constituents in trying to kind of slim down their garbage arrangement within what they are required to do. I am very willing and eager to help with that if and as it's useful to the constituent. I just want to acknowledge that I know for a lot of zero waste and low waste households, it can feel frustrating to feel punished for doing a good thing. And so just want to reiterate that we do want to support this as a change within the upcoming contract that we have the opportunity to revisit. And also that I'm excited about additional opportunities through federal funding that we're getting to potentially do even more and better in our waste services that kind of build on a lot of this theme around more sustainable waste disposal. So I simply wanted to offer those acknowledgements as the council member representing this particular person. I will be moving the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer, given that it's my understanding this falls within the kind of broad category of things that services have been rendered and they do need to be compensated for, even if we agree with the policy critique. So that would be my recommendation with those caveats and acknowledgements from a place of wanting to in the medium and long term address this. And I do appreciate the chance to speak to that.
All right, there's a motion from Ms. Jalali. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Council President Brenman.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted.
All right, that brings us to the end of our official business. Does anyone have news from the wards or things that they'd like to share before we adjourn? Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. With just the warning that you're going to have to hustle to get to both of these events tomorrow night, but that's just often how it is in Ward 2. So first, it's very exciting to announce that Neighborhood House is going to be inducting 2 community leaders from the West Side into its honorary board of directors. Gilbert DeLao and Elsa Vega Perez are both going to be inducted tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. The presentation is at 5 at the Wellstone Center, and light refreshments will be served. So for those of you who know Gilbert and Elsa, they are true community institutions and leaders, and it's wonderful to be able to honor them in this way. So hopefully you can join. And then after that, you can still hustle over to the Intercontinental Hotel for Native Rise, which is an event being put on by American Indian OIC. It's a chance to learn, connect, and build power with Minnesota's urban American Indian community and prepare for the 2022 legislative session. There will be networking hour, drum and songs from the West End Singers, dinner, remarks from community leaders, and a special appearance by Chef Sean Sherman, who is the founder of the Sous Chef Company and a Wamni restaurant. So that's from 5:30 to 8:30. Plenty of time to get to both.
Great. Other news or thoughts before we adjourn today? I'm going to throw one out to Mr. Tolbert because I know he wants to heckle me about this, but if it is November, it is almost the end of the year for your bulky pickups. And so folks need to remember that you either have 2 or 3 bulky pickups that come with your paid service to garbage. So as we talk about garbage, I was reminded that I've even seen people on social media saying, hey, I've got one to spare if anyone needs to throw away a bulky item. I know that's not probably the true intention of the program, but if you have things like ottomans, recliners, mattresses, electronics, all you need to do is call your hauler and they will schedule a time to come pick up your bulky item and get it out of your house and clear up space for the holidays and your relatives who may be coming over. So yeah, so remember, bulky item pickups, it's November. I might remind us again in December. Anything else before we adjourn?
I'll just
Mr.
say,
Colbert.
I want to thank you for the reminder because I have meant to call them to get the bulky for me all week and I forgot, and now you just reminded me. So hopefully I can get on the phone now, and please remind us next week because I'll probably forget between now and when we get off.
It's a really slick system when you use it, and then they just show up with a box truck and away it goes. So good. See, I'm glad I helped one person remember. All right. Anything else before we adjourn today? All right. Looks like there is none. So we are adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.